Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere very cold, very quiet, and incredibly slow. Imagine this. You're waking up in the middle of the Central Asian steppe. Wrapped in layers of sheepskin and fur, the kind of morning where even the yaks don't bother getting up too early. The fire in your yurt is out. Of course, it always is. There's no clock, no calendar, and somehow no rush to find either one. You sit up, brushing off bits of felt from the mat beneath you, and realize it's completely silent. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring a little. Outside, the wind hasn't quite started its daily howling. The sun is trying to rise, but can't be bothered to hurry. In this world, time feels more like a rumor than a rule. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. I also want to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it for you right now? Now, dim the light. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stretch your legs slowly and notice your feet are still wrapped in thick cloth. No shoes yet. There's no reason to hurry. After all, in Mongol tradition, mornings start gradually. You poke your head out of the yurt and see nothing but frozen grasses stretching to the horizon. Your neighbor's herd is still lying down. The sky is a watercolor of pale blue and silver. You decide to wait until your breath stops turning to smoke before stepping out. The Mongols, nomadic, horsebound, and famously indifferent to the ticking of any mechanical clock-lived lives, measured in seasons, migrations, and the time it takes for tea to cool. They rarely wore watches, obviously, and didn't obsess over punctuality. In fact, they may have invented the art of "I'll get to it when I get to it." You shuffle over to the embers and begin to rekindle the fire. But because it gives your hands something to do. The ritual of fire lighting is slow, deliberate. You think about how long it might take. 10 minutes, 20, but who's counting? Historians still debate whether the Mongols even cared about linear time the way we do. Their concept of time was deeply cyclical. Sun up, sun down. Grass grows, grass fades. People live, people go. Their calendar was lunar, their measurements seasonal. There's no recorded obsession with hours, minutes, or deadlines. Honestly, if you had tried to explain a Google Calendar to them, they might have assumed you were cursed. A pot of milk tea goes over the flames. It's salted, oily, and surprisingly comforting. You sip slowly and look at your toes, again still wrapped, still tucked. Later in the story, you'll hear about warriors tying their feet together. But for now, You just think about how warm yours are. As the warmth spreads, you finally notice what's missing. Noise. No roosters, no engines, no rush. Just a quiet so complete it feels curated. Like a spa, if spas had more goats. You glance over at an old saddle resting by the tent pole. It belonged to someone's grandfather, maybe great-grandfather. Still, used, still works. Time passes differently when objects outlast their owners. A Mongol might tell you that something is new if it's less than a decade old. You begin to understand that nothing here is measured in minutes. You watch a kid, the goat kind, not the human kind, try to climb a frozen barrel. He slips off and tries again and again. You think, maybe this is the perfect metaphor for how Mongol time works cyclical. Stubborn and hilariously indifferent to progress. Then, an elder walks by. You nod. He nods. No one says good morning because, well, the day hasn't fully decided to begin yet. He offers you a dried curd snack which tastes like a blend of cheese, stone, and regret. You chew it for what feels like an entire semester. You ask the elder what day it is, and he shrugs. The one after yesterday. You nod. Fair enough. He sits beside you, staring into the fire. After a long silence, he says, "Back when I was young, the winds were louder." You ask what that means. He shrugs again. Maybe I had better ears. And then, nothing more. Just the crackle of burning Dongyan, underrated heat source. By the way, as the fire grows, you feel yourself getting sleepy again, which is confusing because you just woke up. But here, that's allowed. Sleep isn't something scheduled. Something that just happens when it wants to. Before you drift off, the elder murmurs something. Some people used to tie their feet at night. You blink. Why? You ask. He smiles. To remind themselves there was nowhere to run. You don't quite know what to make of that yet. You wake up, again still wrapped in fur, still warm, and still confused about whether this is morning or something else entirely. The elder is gone. The fire is cold now, and outside, the sky has made zero progress. The goats are moving, though in that leisurely, clueless way they have, and that means it's time to count them. You slide on your thick boots, savvy as guilt, but warmer than forgiveness, and step out into the dry, frost-bitten grass. It crunches beneath you. You glance at the herd. They don't seem particularly organized, which is normal. Still, you begin to count them one by one. This is not your job. Not exactly. But everyone does it. You count the sheep, the goats, even a wandering chicken that may or may not belong to anyone. Not because you're worried something's missing, but because counting gives your hands something to do while your brain drifts off into the haze of steppe thought. 1 dot 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 2 dot 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 3. Why does that one have two different colored horns? Counting livestock was one of the ways Mongol herders passed time with. You can even call it that. Herds weren't just wealth. They were clocks, calendars, emotional support animals, and entertainment, all rolled into one vaguely smelly package. If a goat sneezed twice before sunrise, maybe it meant snow. Or maybe the goat had just eaten something weird. Who's to say? The counting goes slowly. You make it to 12 before losing track. Then you start over. This is fine. Starting over is expected. Mongol pastoral culture thrived on the art of redundancy. They moved in circles. They lived in circles. Those yurts didn't invent themselves. And sometimes their thoughts looped right back where they started. You don't question it anymore. You just count again. Around you, others are emerging from their tents. No one is in a hurry. One man spends an hour adjusting a single saddle strap. A child is trying to put boots on the wrong feet. A dog yawns, then lies back down. The only thing with any real urgency is the wind, which arrives suddenly, like it forgot to set its alarm. You pull your coat tighter and continue with your impromptu livestock census. A woman nearby is also counting. You compare numbers, then both shrugged. There's no agreement, no argument, just the shared understanding that numbers are more suggestions than facts. Historians have long noted that Mongol societies didn't place much value in strict numerical systems. Sure, they could count specially when it came to distributing herds or dividing spoils, but exactitude wasn't a priority, unless you were in battle. And today, you're not in battle. You're staring at a sheep that looks like it's judging you. Counting animals also had a calming rhythm to it. Mongol children would do it before bed. Warriors might do it before a raid. The slow, repetitive nature of the act mimicked meditation. One ancient herder even wrote a poem about it, though calling it a poem might be generous. It was mostly just the word sheep repeated 37 times. But still, this counting, it matters. Because in a land where time slips through your fingers like sand in a storm, counting gives you an anchor. However flawed, it's like counting ceiling tiles when you can't sleep, or mentally cataloging your exes, alphabetically useless, but oddly soothing. You're on goat number 28 when an elder woman approaches with a bundle of dried dung in her arms. "Missed too," she says, nodding at a pair in the distance. You pretend you already knew that. "Back in my day," she adds, "we counted by shadows." If a goat's shadow touched its own tail, it meant lunch. You wait for her to laugh. She doesn't. She's absolutely serious. And here's the twist. She might be right. Mongols were masters of observational timekeeping. They could tell the time by wind direction, horse behavior, and the taste of the air, while Europe was busy building mechanical clocks that broke every winter. Mongols were relying on intuitive, sensory clocks that rarely failed unless the sun didn't show up, which, to be fair, happened a lot. You remember reading somewhere that Genghis Khan's army coordinated movements without using synchronized watches. They used shared natural cues, sun height, bird migrations, cloud patterns. Imagine organizing a company meeting that way. We'll all log on when the clouds resemble a bowl of dumplings. Strangely, it worked for them. You finish your Countagandon. Feel a small sense of accomplishment, even if it's wrong. Even if the numbers don't match. What matters is the motion, the ritual, the permission to do something slowly, without needing it to end. And just as you're about to head back to your yurt, a goat sneezes. Twice, you freeze. A child nearby gasps and points at the sky. Nothing happens. Bad omen, he says. Or maybe just dust, you reply. He shrugs. Could be both. You wake up for what feels like the third time today, though no one here would ever correct you. Time in a Mongol steppe has the consistency of overcooked noodles, flexible, directionless, and somehow always looping back on itself. You sit, again by the fire, now rekindled by someone who doesn't mention your previous shift. They just nod, as if to say, yeah, fire happens when it happens. Outside, the light is different, but not dramatically. Maybe it's mid-morning. Maybe early afternoon. The shadow of your yurt's pole is slightly longer now, and a few people are walking slowly in no particular direction. You stretch your legs and realize they've gone slightly numb. You wonder if it's the cold or the fact that you've barely moved. Do stand. Your boots squeak in the frost. Then you notice something curious. A young man crouched beside his horse, watching its shadow. He seems very focused, almost meditative. You approach and sit beside him, trying to follow his gaze. The horse doesn't seem to mind. Eventually, the man speaks without looking at you. When the shadow touches the hoof, it's time to check the saddle. You nod, pretending you understand. He continues, if it touches the belly, time to rest. If it disappears entirely, ... You've missed lunch. You look at the horse. Its shadow is somewhere in the vague area of its ribs. So, he shrugs. Maybe have a snack. This, you realize, is how Mongols marked time. Not with clocks, but with context. A shadow wasn't just a shadow, it was a kind of sundial, deeply personal and entirely unmechanical. It told you when to act or when not to. There's a theory, though not universally accepted, that some Mongol clans had systems for using their own bodies as rudimentary timekeepers, sitting in certain positions, feeling the weight of the sun on their backs. They could judge the passage of hours with surprising accuracy. Some even claimed they could tell the time by the way wind pushed against their braids. Historians still debate whether this was true or just poetic storytelling, but honestly, wouldn't you rather believe it? You lie back on the frozen grass. The sky above is vast bluer than any phone wallpaper you've ever seen. Clouds drift like fat sheep, too lazy to graze. You close your eyes and feel the sun on your cheeks. It's not warm, exactly, but it's not unfriendly either. Your breath rises in faint puffs. You listen. In the distance, you hear the flapping of a felt flap. Somewhere, a woman hums while boiling milk. A horse snorts. A child laughs. It all sounds very far away and very close at the same time. Nearby, someone's preparing to ride out. You hear the gentle clink of stirrups, the creak of leather, and the muted thud of boots meeting the ground. But there's no urgency. The horse stands like a statue. The rider adjusts their cloak for several minutes before mounting. Then they just sit there, waiting. You watch, curious. Minutes pass, or maybe not. Eventually, the rider turns and says, "The sun's not right yet." You nod again. Like this makes perfect sense, which, at this point, it kind of does. In your world, everything is about speed. Apps load in seconds. Meetings start on the hour. Your toaster has a countdown. Here, even saddling a horse is a ceremony of hesitation. Mongols didn't just measure time differently, they felt it differently. And in doing so, they escaped the tyranny of the tick. You remember a tale the elder told you this morning, was it yesterday? About a general who never used the stars to navigate. Instead, he relied on the pace of his own breath. When I've exhaled 400 times, we rest, he supposedly said. It sounds absurd. But then again, you've counted goats twice today. Who's really winning? There's even a rumor among Mongol storytellers that some warriors would ride until their sweat stopped steaming. Then use that as a signal to stop. The logic being, if the body has cooled, the sun must be shifting. Is it scientific? Not. Is it deeply poetic and kind of weird? Absolutely yes. You sit up again, brushing the frost from your cloak. The young man beside the horse offers you a strip of dried meat, teacher and saltier than a missed deadline. You chew slowly Partly because it takes effort, but also because fast eating here is considered suspicious, as if you're hiding something. Probably hunger. The man finally mounts his horse. He clicks his tongue twice. The horse doesn't move. Maybe later, he says, and dismounts again. No one laughs. This is normal. There's a peace here in not knowing the hour, in not needing to. You feel your shoulders drop just a little more. Your jaw unclenches. Ill alarms, no countdowns, no blinking numbers to tell you you're late. Just a horse, a shadow, and a vague idea that maybe it's almost time for soup. And just before you stand, you notice something you missed earlier. A thin cord tied gently around the man's ankle. Nothing tight, just ... present. A reminder, maybe, of what you'll learn that soon. Later, though you're not quite sure how much later, you find yourself inside another yurt. This one lined with more cushions than people. You've been offered tea, the kind that tastes a little like boiled leather and a lot like salted milk. It's comfort in a bowl, if you let it be. Across from you sits an older woman, maybe 70 winters, maybe more. Her hands are busy with thread, but her eyes track your every blink. She sees you looking at her ankle. There it is again, that thin cord, tied just above the arch. Soft as grass, but deliberate. You try not to stare, fail. She notices anyway. She says, smiling as if you've asked a question. You saw the tether. You nod carefully. It's not a trap, she adds, and chuckles softly, unless you count remembering as a trap. You raise an eyebrow, slowly, like you're in an old kung fu movie and about to deliver wisdom. But in reality, you have no idea what she means. She leans forward, thread still passing through her fingers. Some say the body forgets where it is in time. The cord, she taps her ankle, reminds the body to stay put. Philosophy. See, there's a long-standing, barely recorded belief that the steppe itself could unmoor your sense of self. The endless horizon, the blur between seasons, the wind that sounded the same in July as it did in January. Some people began to feel detached, like walking ghosts. The solution: ground yourself. Literally, historians call this ritual tethering, a practice whispered more than written. Some Mongols would tie a thin piece of string around their ankles or wrists. During especially long periods of travel, or during the more timeless parts of the year-rolly spring fog, endless winter dusk, the long shimmering days where noon feels like forever. It wasn't about stopping movement. It was about anchoring your perception. A gentle psychological post-it note. You are here, now, in this place. You sip your tea and glance at your own foot. unadorned. Wondering, the woman notices. "You'll want one," she says, rising with more grace than you thought possible. She rummages through a leather pouch and returns with a simple, pale cord. She doesn't offer it. She just places it on the cushion between you and waits. You hesitate. Then you reach for it. She helps tie it. With the expertise of someone who's looped hundreds of these on children, warriors, dreamers, forgetters, the knot is gentle. It doesn't constrict. It merely exists like a whisper that lingers in the wind. "There," she says, satisfied. "Now your feet will remember what your mind forgets." You don't feel different yet, but there's a peculiar awareness that grows. Every time you shift, your ankle grazes the cord, and a strange thought flickers through your brain. I am not lost. Of course, not everyone took this practice seriously. Mongol humor being what it was. There were plenty of jokes about leashing yourself like a dog or tying knots so the wind won't steal your thoughts. Still, it persisted especially among the elderly, the deeply spiritual, and the poetically inclined. The warriors had their versions too, tying short red ribbons to their belts before long campaigns. A more dramatic way of saying, "Come back to who you are." One scholar argues, though with very little evidence, that this ankle practice may have influenced later rituals in Central Asian monasteries, where novice monks wore tight cords during silent retreats. Others scoff at that, preferring the simpler explanation. It was just a superstition born from boredom and cold feet. Still, they can't explain why, even now. Some nomadic families keep the tradition alive. You stand again and test your step. It's exactly the same, but not. Outside, the day continues its timeless meander. You walk slower, not from fatigue, but from attunement. The wind feels more personal. The crunch of your boots now carries meaning. You pass a child tying a small string around a wooden doll's ankle. You smile. She shrugs, as if to say, "Well, dolls forget too." Further on, you find a group of young people lounging around a half-assembled cart. They're tying knots in reed's knot for utility, just for the satisfaction of motion. One of them sees your cord and raises a hand in quiet solidarity. No words, just the acknowledgement of shared weirdness. You think about your world again, briefly, where calendars yell at you, where phones vibrate with relentless precision, where forgetting what day it is a crime punished by missed emails and social shame. Here, it's a lifestyle, so you keep walking, ankle gently tethered, eyes half-lidded, heartbeats syncopated to a rhythm older than clocks. You don't know what time it is, but your shadow is leaning eastward now, stretching long like a cat. Maybe that means it's late afternoon. Maybe it just means the sun is thinking about moving on. You find yourself smiling Your feet don't need to know everything. You wander a little farther from the camp now, though farther here is a flexible term. Everything is a blur of earth and horizon, and distance plays tricks on the eyes. The air is still, the kind of still that feels intentional, like even. The wind is respecting your space today as you crest a gentle rise. You spot something in the distance, a man sitting atop a large stone, not moving, not whittling, not doing anything really, just being. You've seen statues with more activity, but there's something magnetic about him, like he's guarding a secret too slow to run away. You approach carefully, steps muffled by the dry grass. When you're close enough to speak, you don't. He doesn't look at you, but says you can sit. So, naturally, you do. Minutes pass in silence. Then, your cord is new. You nod. Just tied it this morning. He hums approvingly, like a judge at a ribbon tying contest. Then, after another long pause I used to keep two, you glance at his ankles, bare. What happened? I stopped forgetting, he says. Mostly, you glance out at the vastness in front of you. It's like staring at a screensaver that never loops. Then he speaks again, as if reading your thoughts. The steppe messes with time because it doesn't have corners. You can't hide from the day. It just wraps around you. You shake your head. He seems pleased by this. They weren't a tribe, exactly. More like a habit. Certain folks would walk to the same spot every morning and just ... observe how sand moved, how wind rearranged the same hill over and over. They said if you stared long enough, the sand would tell you what season it was, or what you forgot to remember. You try to imagine that, watching sand until it speaks. Back home, you can barely sit through a loading screen without checking 3 other apps. There's a story, he continues, about one sand watcher who sat in the same spot for 9 days straight. Didn't speak, didn't sleep much, just sat. When someone finally asked him what he'd learned, he said, "The hillside. You blink. That's it. Yup." He seems genuinely moved by the memory. You realize this isn't a punchline. This is the point. There are academic references, scattered and scarce about these observers of impermanence. Suspect they were a kind of proto-meditative sect. Others think they were just eccentric loners with too much free time. One particularly bold researcher suggested they may have been weather watchers, predicting storms from the way sand piled and dispersed. But the truth is, no one knows. And no one here seems eager to define them. After a while, you ask, so ... They just sat. He shrugs. Some people paint, some write, some cook. We sit. You glance down at your own hands. They feel twitchy, restless. You'd kill for a fidget spinner or at least a deck of cards. But you hold still, watching a blade of grass tremble. It's more hypnotic than you expect. The man beside you shifts, just slightly. Time doesn't like to be chased, but it's very curious. If you sit still, it might come sniff you out. There's that Mongol humor again. Soft, dry, bizarrely comforting. You think about how absurdly freeing this is. You've spent most of your life racing clocks. And now, here you are, proud owner of an ankle string, being taught the art of staring at dirt. Still, there's something happening beneath the surface. A slowing, a settling. Your breaths are longer. Your thoughts are less jagged. You haven't checked the sky in minutes, and that feels like progress. The man finally stands. You notice he's left a small pile of pebbles in a deliberate ring beside the stone. Not random, not quite a message, just something to say. I was here. You stay a little longer. Not because you need to, just because you can. Eventually, you walk back toward the camp. The yurt roofs begin to rise over the horizon like soft domes of bread. You pass a child herding goats by talking to them in complete sentences, as if they're co-workers on a team project. The goats seem to understand their roles. Date what might be considered a complaint. You stop at a patch of uneven ground. Someone has drawn a winding line through the dirt with a stick. It loops and curls with no destination. Just a moment captured in motion. You run your toe along it. Then you add a spiral. The sky deepens in color. Somewhere behind you, a hawk cries. Ahead, someone starts singing quietly and off-key. And you, for the first time in what feels like days, realize you haven't wondered what time it is. Night creeps in like a cat with velvet paws, slow, silent, and oddly smug. The sky over the steppe fades from apricot to lavender to that deep, full indigo that makes stars show up like gossip at a family dinner. You're lying on your back, now wrapped in a blanket that smells faintly of sheep and firewood, watching constellations arrange themselves like ancient PowerPoint slides. Someone nearby is snoring. Not loudly, just enough to let the universe know they've surrendered. You, however, are still awake and wondering. So, you ask the question aloud, mostly to yourself. Why the feet? From the darkness comes a voice, amused. Where else would you tie it? You turn your head and make out a silhouette reclining on a log. You hadn't noticed them before. They laugh, gently, not mocking, more like someone who knows exactly why your question matters. The feet carry everything, they say. Memories, weight, mistakes. That's where forgetting starts. Ever walked into a room and forgot why you went in? You nod. Same thing, but bigger. Tonight, the camp has gathered near a central fire pit. No dramatic ceremonies, no chance you're handed one. You sip cautiously. It tastes ... committed. As you sit, someone brings out a stringed instrument, Maureen. Core, the horsehead fiddle. It croons like wind under a door. You don't understand the lyrics being sung, but you get the meaning, longing, and home, and roads that don't always go in straight lines. The music flows, and you learn another detail. In some Mongol clans, the ankle cord wasn't just a solo ritual. It was a family one, a kind of temporary unity. During long migrations, when people had to split into smaller groups to cover more land or avoid harsh weather, families would tie similar cords on their ankles, not just to stay grounded, but as a quiet promise. We'll meet again. We're still tethered. That gets to you more than you expect. You picture families moving across the plain like strands of hair in the wind. Little knots of memory keeping them from disappearing completely. No Google Maps, no pinned locations. Just trust in invisible strings. One story floats your way, told by a man with more mustache than face. He speaks slowly, letting each word land like snow. My grandmother kept her cord under her pillow when she died. Said it helped her remember where she came from. Said death forgets too, sometimes. The fire crackles. Someone adds a log, and it splits with a hiss. Sparks fly up into the night like punctuation marks. You begin to understand something. These strings aren't about superstition, or at least not only. They're about gentle resistance against forgetting, against being erased by a world that doesn't stop. A quiet way to say, I was here. I mattered. My feet touched this ground. Back home, people put up plaques, name buildings, take selfies at landmarks. Here, they tie a string. There's a certain elegance to it. Someone passes you another cord. This one is red. A woman with her hair in 2 long braids says, that one's for travel. You tie it loosely over the first one. She nods, satisfied. If you get where you're going, it'll fall off on its own. If you don't, it reminds you where to head back. Like GPS, you say, dot. She blinks. What's that? Never mind. And then, because sleep feels near, but not quite here, someone decides to tell a story. Not a big one. Just a little fable, wrapped in humor and quiet wisdom. There was once a man. The storyteller begins, who tied a string around his ankle so he wouldn't forget where he buried his treasure. But he tied it so tightly, he forgot he could walk. So he stayed in one place, guarding a hole in the ground that held only an old shoe and 2 onions. A laugh ripples through the camp. It's soft and low, like a lullaby from tired lungs. You glance at your foot again. The string's there, still soft, still strange. Sometimes the storyteller adds, the point isn't to remember what you tied the string for. The point is to know that you once cared enough to tie it. That lands differently. You lean back and let your shoulders relax fully for the first time in hours. The stars above don't twinkle, they pulse, bold and slow and full of secrets, the kind you don't need to understand to fall asleep under. Nearby, someone begins to hum. The tune is ancient, probably hummed through hundreds of winters and more than a few blizzards. It sticks to the air like honey to a spoon, and as you start to drift, not quite sleeping, not quite awake, realize the world hasn't stopped. The night still moves. The goats still mumble in their sleep. The sky still rotates. But you've stopped needing to keep up for now. That's enough. You wake before the sun, not on purpose, but because the cold pokes your nose like a curious toddler. The sky hasn't quite decided what color it wants to be, yet somewhere between smoke and promise, you're still swaddled in layers of wool and the vague scent of last night's fire, but your eyes are open and your feet still tied. The cords are snug, but not uncomfortable, like a gentle reminder rather than a restriction. You wiggle your toes just to make sure they still work. They do, barely dot. Outside the yurt, the world is doing its morning impression of being asleep. Even the horses are yawning. You spot one standing like it's forgotten how legs function, its head drooping at an angle that seems professionally relaxed. You step outside, and the air hits you like a truth you weren't ready for. Brisk, dry, honest. A woman is already up, boiling something over a small fire. She nods in greeting, then gestures to a bowl of what looks like rice porridge. You accept. It's warm, slightly sweet, and exactly what you didn't know you needed. You eat slowly, letting your body remember what morning is. Today, you're told, you'll be joining a small group heading toward a seasonal pasture to check on some distant animals. Not a dramatic journey, more of a long walk with a purpose you won't fully understand, which, honestly, feels on brand by now as you walk. One of your companions, wiry older man with sun-dried skin and an impressive lack of urgency, points to a distant patch of uneven land and says that used to be a village. Long time ago. All gone now. You ask what happened. River moved. People didn't. Simple as that. And just like that, you're thinking about memory again. Not the dramatic kind, the slow kind. The kind that erodes or calcifies depending on how stubborn you are. He continues, we tie the feet so that memories drip down, not out. You raise an eyebrow, head forgets. Feet remember. There's a Mongolian proverb that roughly translates to your feet will tell you where your heart is. It's often used when someone returns to a childhood home after years away. But here, it applies to everything. As you walk, you notice others doing strange little rituals. One woman hums every time she crests a hill. A teenage boy tosses a pebble into the air at regular intervals. When you ask him why, he shrugs and says, keeps the sky from closing. That's either poetic or complete nonsense. Possibly both. The terrain changes slowly, grasslands melting into rockier earth, with patches of moss and lichen clinging to shaded crevices like shy party guests. The air smells different here, thinner, cleaner, a little like metal, a little like secrets. You pause to rest near a cluster of stones that look intentionally arranged. Someone tells you they're Ovu's stone piles used as sacred markers. Travelers add a rock as they pass, sometimes a ribbon or a coin. You add a pebble. No one asks why. No one needs to. Historians debate whether these ovus originated as religious structures or simply evolved from practical trail markers. The answer is probably yes to both. Like most traditions out here, they exist in the space between necessity and reverence. As you sit, you notice your ankle cords again, still there, still holding Dot. You ask the older man if he's ever forgotten something important. He doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he pulls out a folded piece of cloth. Inside is a tiny, carved figure abstract, maybe a bird or a horse. He stares at it for a moment. This belonged to someone I loved, he says. I forget her name sometimes, but not the way her voice got soft when she said goodbye. That's in my legs. You don't speak. There's nothing to say that would be better than silence. Later, you come across a patch of ground where the grass has been pressed flat in wide circles, like something heavy rested there. You ask what it was. Yurts, someone says. 2 summers ago. Gone now. No trace except the bruised grass. Everything disappears. The older man says, but the feet remember the weight. You try to imagine your own feet remembering your apartment carpet, your phone charger, the tile in your kitchen. It feels absurd, but also, maybe not. You reach the seasonal pasture by midday. The animals are fine, bored, probably, but alive and chewing. One goat walks straight into a bush and seems confused when it can't find the way out. Classic goat behavior. While others check. On the herds, you sit on a flat rock, untie one of your cords, and hold it in your hands. The fibers are soft now, frayed a little from use. You tie it back not for any reason, just because it feels like the respectful thing to do. The wind picks up. You think you hear singing, but it could be the grass. On the way back, the group walks slower. No one speaks, not out of tiredness, but contentment. The kind that only comes from being extremely far from a schedule. Back at camp, the sun is beginning to lower itself behind a distant ridge. The light is gold and long and lazy. Someone hands you a cup of tea that tastes like firewood and forgiveness. You sip slowly, feet stretched toward the flames, and realize you haven't checked your phone in days, weeks, or maybe it never mattered. The next morning, the wind greets you before anything else does. Kalsho. It whistles through the camp with the polite aggression of a teacher reminding you that recess is over. Tents flap gently. Horses snort with displeasure. They'd prefer to hit the snooze button if goats had buttons. Your feet still tied. Feel heavier today, not painful, just ... considered. Like they've gained a tiny archive of everything you've walked over. You stretch them out, rotate the ankles, and they creak like old hinges. That's normal now taught today. You're not going anywhere. The pace slows, and the people around you fall into their quiet daily rhythms. Someone mends a saddle strap. Another chops roots into pieces, so small you wonder if they're making a potion or just very picky stew. You're invited to help with the yurt maintenance. Not exactly glamorous, but deeply satisfying. Holding wooden poles, adjusting felt linings, brushing off dust that's probably older than your entire apartment lease, while you're tightening a strap. A boy, maybe 9, maybe timeless, asks if you've had your dreams interpreted yet. You blink. My what? Your dreams, he repeats. You've been here long enough. Surely the strings are working. Dream interpretation, you learn, is something of a communal hobby, not in the mystical, neon synpsychic kind of way. More like a casual conversation starter. How'd you sleep? Becomes, what did the goats in your dreams say? You confess that your latest dream involved a vending machine that only dispensed single socks. The boy nods, utterly serious. You're trying too hard to remember something that comes in pairs. You laugh, but the weird part is ... that kind of makes sense. While taking a break, you sit next to a woman who's stitching something by hand. Her needle moves like it's telling a story only she can hear. She's got cords around both ankles, one green, one white. You ask her what they mean. Greens for waiting, she says. Whites for peace. Do you always need a reason to tie them? She shrugs. Sometimes you tie them before. You know why? Sometimes they tell you later. That hits you somewhere deep. Because the truth is, you've been wondering whether any of this actually works. Whether a string around your ankle can really make you forget the stuff that weighs you down or help you remember what you're supposed to carry. Historians still debate this. Of course, whether the ankle-binding custom had any measurable effect on memory or orientation. Some dismiss it as symbolic ritual, while others suggest it may have induced a meditative state similar to mindfulness. One theory even posits that it acted as a proprioceptive trigger, a way to literally feel your identity. You don't know which version is true. Maybe all of them. Later, you find yourself watching two old friends argue over the best shape for a dumpling. Not politics, not legacy, not the end of the world. Dumplings. One insists on crescent, the other swears by triangle. Both argue with the energy of retired professors and the gleam of lifelong comedians. You watch them for 30 minutes and realize it's the most peaceful you've felt in years. That night, a storm rolls in. Not a dramatic one, just enough thunder to give the sky a bass line. Raindrops tap gently on the roof of your yurt, like a friend rehearsing a difficult confession. You lie back and listen. Your feet are warm under the blanket. The cords press lightly against your skin to soft reminders that you exist in a place where people care about strange things, like dream vending machines and goat language and the direction of the wind. Outside, the world continues. The wind wraps around the tents like it's tucking them in. You close your eyes, and for the first time since you arrived, you don't try to remember anything at all. You just let yourself float. You awaken to a morning wrapped in silence, thicker than a wool blanket. The kind of silence that makes you want to listen harder, as if the earth itself is holding its breath. Your feet are still tied loose enough now to feel like a comforting hug instead of a constraint. Today, the camp moves differently. Instead of the usual chatter, you notice people tending to small rituals that almost feel like ceremonies, but without the grandiosity. A man gently brushes his horse's mane, fingers moving slowly as if coaxing a secret from the strands. A woman scatters handfuls of crushed herbs around the yurt, the scent sharp and fresh, reminding you of pine forests back home. You're told these small acts aren't just practical. They're meant to anchor the spirit, to keep the restless parts of you from wandering too far. Your curiosity nudges you to ask, why tie feet to forget time? But still, do all these careful things to remember. A soft laugh replies, because forgetting isn't about erasing. It's about balance. You forget what weighs you down, so you can carry what matters. You think of your own daily life, constant notifications, schedules, the endless parade of things begging for attention. The idea of deliberately tying your feet, of slowing down to forget, feels like an act of rebellion wrapped in quiet dignity. Later, the camp gathers near a fire as the sun slides toward the horizon. Someone starts telling a story about a legendary Mongol craftsman who supposedly invented a saddle so comfortable it made horses fall asleep mid-ride. You laugh imagining the chaos of sleepy horses wandering off into the sunset, leaving warriors and traders baffled. Stories like this feel like secret gifts, slower than history books, but richer in flavor. You learn that historians still debate whether this craftsman truly existed or is a folk invention designed to celebrate patience and ingenuity. As the fire crackles, a child asks if you've noticed how the night sky here feels closer, more personal. You nod, because it does. The stars aren't distant pinpricks, but friends watching over you, whispering ancient lullabies. The evening grows quiet. You lie back on the ground, the rough texture of the earth pressing against your cheek like a grounding force. Your feet ache slightly, but the cords are loose enough to remind you gently not to trap, but to guide. You wonder what it would be like to live here, always to let time slip through your fingers like the wind. To tie your feet so firmly to the present that the past can't weigh you down. Your breath slows. The fire dims. The world, H-U-S, ace, S, and for the first time in a long while, you feel the strange comfort of forgetting not as loss, but as peace. Word count, 1037. You awake slowly, the first light filtering through the felt walls of your yurt like a soft invitation. Outside, the world is stirring with a gentle, rhythmic, pulseless slow heartbeat of life moving through the vast steppe. Your feet, still tied in their familiar cords, feel a little lighter today, as if they've learned to carry not just your body, but the weight of moments you didn't know you were holding on to. It's strange how something as simple as a string can make you notice the ground beneath you in a way you haven't before you rise and stretch, feeling the stiffness of travel and the unfamiliarity of this pace, that deliberate slowness that seems almost rebellious in a world obsessed with speed. A small group is gathered near the fire, preparing what looks like a feast of sorts. Thinly sliced meats, dried fruits, and a bubbling pot of fermented mare's milk, or arag, which you're told is a traditional Mongolian drink that tastes somewhere between yogurt and a sour apple cider. It's an acquired taste, they warn, but it's best shared among friends and strangers alike. As you sip, the taste tangy and strangely comforting. Your mind wanders to the idea of traditions, how they evolve and endure. Sometimes in the smallest details, like tying feet or sharing a drink. One of the elders tells you about the steppe code, an unwritten set of rules governing hospitality and honor among the nomads. You learn that hospitality is sacred here. A stranger is always welcomed, fed and sheltered, no questions asked. This code has helped communities survive the harshest winters and the loneliest expanses. You nod thoughtfully, realizing that these ancient customs are not just survival tactics, but stories told through actions, gentle instructions for how to live and belong. Later, you wander toward a nearby river. The water clear and cold, slipping over smooth stones that feel like secrets polished by time. You dip your hands in, feeling the shock of the chill. And remember that some Mongols believed water could wash away bad memories and bring clarity. As you sit on the bank, you notice a cluster of small footprints pressed into the mud, tiny and delicate, as if a child or a bird had paused here recently. You imagine the lives connected to those prints, stories you'll never know but feel oddly tethered to. Historians still debate whether the practice of foot binding among some Mongol tribes was purely symbolic or had practical purposes related to survival and meditation. The truth is likely woven from many threads: ritual, health, psychological, blending into a tradition that's as much about inner life as it is about outer form. That night, back at camp, the wind whispers lullabies through the grass. You lie back, the earth cool beneath you. Your feet gently bound, yet free in a way that feels paradoxically right. You close your eyes and imagine the river flowing, endlessly carrying memories away, making room for peace. You wake with the soft light of dawn, painting everything in pale gold. The camp stirs quietly, like a giant waking from a deep, gentle sleep. Your feet, still bound, feel almost like old friends, now familiar and strangely comforting, as if they're holding you steady in a world that's always shifting. Today, you're invited to learn about traditional Mongolian medicine, a mix of herbal remedies, massage techniques, and rituals passed down through generations. The healer is an elderly woman with eyes sharp as the winter wind and hands that move with practiced grace. She shows you a handful of dried herbs, wormwood, licorice root, and a bright yellow flower you don't recognize. You watch as she crushes the leaves between her fingers, releasing a scent earthy and slightly sweet. You learn that many remedies are designed not just to heal the body, but to soothe the mind, a reminder that the two are deeply connected. For example, a tea brewed from chamomile and mint is used to calm restless nights. Much like the gentle hum of a fan you might use back home to fall asleep. You try some of the tea, its warmth spreading through you like a soft blanket, and find yourself relaxing in a way you haven't for days. The healer then demonstrates a simple massage technique using stones heated over the fire. She explains how the pressure points on your feet correspond to different parts of the body, kind of ancient reflexology that you realize connects back to the idea of feet holding memories and feelings. Historians still debate the origins of these practices, some suggesting they were influenced by Chinese medicine, while others argue they developed independently, a testament to human ingenuity across cultures as the sun climbs higher. You join a group weaving intricate patterns into felt, a craft both practical and artistic. The designs tell stories of the steppe, horses running free, constellations guiding travelers, and rivers winding like silver ribbons. You feel the rhythm of the needle pulling through fabric, the softness of the wool, and the quiet companionship of those around you. It's a meditation, a shared breath. At dusk, a storyteller gathers the camp by the fire, recounting tales of legendary Mongol warriors whose courage was matched only by their humility. You listen, imagining the crackle of the fire mingling with the distant howl of wolves, and the whisper of the wind through endless grass. You think about how these stories, like the cords around your feet, bind the past to the present, reminding you that even in forgetting, there is remembering as you lie down to sleep. The cords around your ankles feel less like restraints and more like gentle anchors, holding you steady as you drift into dreams woven with history and hope. You wake to the smell of fresh earth and distant smoke curling through the air like lazy ribbons. Your feet, still tied gently, seem to remind you that time here doesn't rush, it meanders. Like the rivers you saw yesterday, today you find yourself invited to join a small group collecting wild herbs from the nearby hills. The grass is soft beneath your hands as you crouch, learning to identify plants with names that sound like poetry in the native tongue. One woman points to a cluster of blue flowers and tells you it's called forget-me-not, though here it's used to bring clarity, not loss. You think about how that contrasts beautifully with the tradition of tying feet to forget time, like the culture balances forgetting with remembering, like two sides of the same coin as you pick the herbs. A man nearby hums a tune that feels familiar, like a lullaby you never learned but somehow know. It drifts over the landscape, blending with bird calls and the rustle of leaves. You ask about the songs. And he explains that music is as vital as water or food to the nomads carrying history, comfort and laughter across generations. He chuckles softly and says, even when your feet are tied, your heart can still run free. You can't help but smile at that dot. Later, you help prepare a simple meal of roasted lamb and barley. The food is humble but nourishing, flavored with herbs you helped gather. Eating feels like participating in a ritual older than you something. Grounding, almost sacred. A quiet conversation begins about the origins of the foot-tying custom. Some elders say it started as a practical way to keep hunters and scouts mindful of their place in the vast landscape. A tether to reality in a world that can easily swallow you whole. Others suggest it was more spiritual a method to induce a meditative state, helping people live fully in the moment. Historians remain divided, debating whether these customs were widespread or localized, symbolic or functional. The mystery seems to deepen the more you learn. That night, as stars sprinkle the sky like spilled salt, you sit outside the yurt, the cords on your ankles barely noticeable now. You watch the fireflies flicker tiny lanterns in the grass and wonder what secrets they carry. Your thoughts slow. The weight of hours fading, you feel yourself drifting gently, time untied but never lost. You awaken again to the familiar soft light filtering through the yurt's felt walls. The sky is painted in delicate pastels, and the camp stirs with the gentle sounds of morning whispers, of conversations. The clink of tools, the occasional neigh of a horse. Your feet remain tied, a quiet reminder that this journey is not about haste. You stand and stretch, the cords moving gently with your skin, neither tight nor loose, perfectly balanced today. You accompany a group to visit a nearby sacred site, a cluster of ancient stones standing tall against the open sky, worn smooth by centuries of wind and time. The stones are said to hold the memories of ancestors and the stories of the land itself. Walking there, you notice how the weight of the cords on your feet grounds you. Each step is deliberate, measured, and full of awareness. Do you realize this? It is part of why the practice exists, not to trap, but to deepen connection to the earth beneath you at the site. A shaman shares stories of the spirits who dwell among the stones. She speaks softly, her voice weaving through the stillness like a gentle breeze. You listen, feeling a sense of calm settle over you. She tells you that the stones are a reminder that time is cyclical, not linear, that forgetting is not an end, but a pause, a breathing space before remembering again. You sit on a smooth rock, feeling its coolness seep into your bones. The sky overhead is vast and endless, a canvas of soft clouds drifting lazily. Historians still debate the true origins and significance of these stone sites, whether they were primarily religious, territorial markers, or ancient calendars. Some argue they served multiple roles, evolving with the people who revered them. As you sit, the wind carries a faint melody, perhaps from a distant flute or the murmurs of the camp. It's a reminder that stories, like memories, are alive, shaped by those who tell them and those who listen. You close your eyes briefly. The cords on your feet, a gentle anchor to the present moment. You breathe deeply, feeling the rhythm of the earth and sky, and the quiet pulse of time itself. You rise slowly, the sun now climbing higher, casting long, soft shadows across the steppe. Your feet remain tied. The familiar sensation no longer a bother, but a part of your rhythm, like the steady beat of a song you're only just beginning to understand. Today, the camp prepares for a ceremony celebrating the changing seasons, a time when the nomads honor the land that sustains them and the ancestors who guide them. You watch as people decorate the camp with colorful ribbons and small offerings, fried fruit, carved bones, and fragrant herbs, each quick item carefully placed with intention and respect. The colors flutter gently in the breeze, creating a dance of light and movement against the muted earth tones of the grass and soil. An elder invites you to join a circle where stories are shared in low, soothing tones of cycles, how life, nature, and time move in loops rather than straight lines. This idea resonates deeply, especially given the ritual of tying feet to forget the relentless march of hours and days. You're told that these ceremonies are meant to bring the community together, to remind everyone of their place in the vast tapestry of existence. It's less about grand gestures and more about quiet, steady presence as the sun sets. Drums begin to beat softly, their rhythm slow and hypnotic. You feel the vibrations in your chest and feet, the chords reminding you of each step, each moment held deliberately. A storyteller begins a tale about a forgotten city swallowed by the sands its ruins, now home to wandering spirits and whispers, carried by the wind. You imagine the once bustling streets, now silent, and the people who lived there, tied to their own rituals and rhythms. Historians still discuss whether the city was real or myth, but the story lives on, a testament to memory and forgetting entwined. As night falls, you lie back under the stars, the cool air brushing your skin. Your feet bound, yet somehow freer than before. You close your eyes, carried by the drum beats and the gentle night sounds, slipping deeper into calm. You wake to the faint glow of dawn, the horizon stretching endlessly before you like a soft, unspooling ribbon. The cords around your feet feel familiar, now less a restraint and more a quiet companion guiding your every step. You rise slowly, breathing in the cool, crisp air, carrying the weight of days filled with stories, songs, and silent moments that feel heavier than any burden. Today is a day of reflection, a time to honor the journey you've taken and the lessons wrapped gently within it. The camp moves at its unhurried pace, each movement deliberate, each gesture imbued with meaning. You find yourself walking among the yurts, the fabric walls whispering tales of countless travelers and the countless feet that have been tied and untied in times past. There's a strange comfort in this repetition of rhythm that soothes like the hum of a distant fan on a warm night. A young girl approaches you, her eyes bright and curious, and offers a simple gift, a small bundle of wildflowers tied with a thin leather strip. She explains these flowers are symbols of new beginnings, resilience, and the beauty found in slow, steady growth. You smile, realizing how much you've come to appreciate this slow unfolding, how tying your feet was never about imprisonment, but about learning to move with intention, to forget time's relentless hurry, and instead be fully present. A final storyteller gathers the camp, weaving a quiet tale of a Mongol who once tied his feet, not to forget time, but to remember what truly mattered: family, land, and the fleeting moments between sunrise and sunset. Historians still debate many details about these customs, but the heart of the story remains clear, a gentle reminder that sometimes slowing down is the fastest way to find yourself. As the day fades, you lie back beneath the vast, star-studded sky. The cords around your feet, soft and loose, like the closing notes of a lullaby. You breathe deeply, feeling a profound peace settle over youth, the peace of forgetting not as loss, but as grace. You've traveled far in these quiet hours, through stories and sensations that slow time itself. Imagine yourself wrapped in warmth and calm, a gentle breeze carrying away all tension. You are safe here, tethered gently to this peaceful moment where every breath is slow, steady, and easy. Let your mind float like a feather on still water, light and free. With each exhale, release any lingering worries or restlessness. Feel your body sinking deeper into softness, your heartbeat syncing with the quiet rhythm of the earth. As your eyes close, picture a sky painted in deep blues and shimmering stars, a serene landscape inviting you into rest. The cords around your feet are no longer restraints, but gentle reminders to slow down, to breathe, to be. Sleep now comes easily, like a tender whisper in the night, wrapping you in comfort and calm. Sweet dreams.